Suffering doesn't come from what happens to you. It comes from your resistance to it. If you want to break free from the endless cycle of emotional pain, the first thing you need to understand is a brutal and often overlooked truth. Suffering is not caused by events themselves, but by your resistance to what is. Most people go through their entire lives without ever realizing this. They remain trapped in a perpetual state of inner turmoil, constantly reliving the same pain over and over again, completely unaware that they are the ones keeping the suffering alive. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, summed this up perfectly in one of his most powerful quotes. "What you resist persists." And this isn't just a nice-sounding phrase. It's a profound psychological and spiritual truth that has the power to transform your entire life. Think about this deeply. Whenever something painful happens in your life, maybe you lose a job, a relationship ends, someone betrays you, or you face a major setback, your emotional reaction is natural. You might feel sadness, anger, disappointment, fear, confusion. All of these are valid, human emotions. But here's the twist. The suffering you experience doesn't come from the event itself. It comes from your internal battle with reality. It comes from the voice in your mind that says, "This shouldn't be happening. This is unfair. I can't live with this." That inner resistance, the refusal to accept what is what transforms pain into prolonged torture. That's the true source of suffering. You see, the human mind is wired to seek control. We want life to go our way. We want to avoid discomfort at all costs. We want predictability, stability, and certainty. But life doesn't work according to our personal preferences. It doesn't obey our rules. It operates under its own mysterious rhythm. So what happens when life throws us a curveball? When things don't go as planned? Our instinct is to resist, to fight, to deny. We say, "This shouldn't have happened to me." And right there, in that moment of mental rebellion against reality, suffering begins. Let's take a breakup, for example. The natural pain of losing someone might last for days, weeks, maybe even a few months. But the suffering that lingers for years, that deep, agonizing ache that comes from refusal, from clinging to the past, from replaying the memories on an endless loop, from believing that it should have turned out differently. It's not the loss that's destroying you. It's your refusal to let go of what already is. The same goes for betrayal, failure, rejection, or any kind of loss. It's not the event that breaks you. It's the constant mental resistance to accepting what's already done. So, how do we break this destructive cycle? The answer lies in a spiritual principle that, when fully embraced, has the power to change everything. Radical acceptance. Now let's be clear. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It doesn't mean that you like what happened. It doesn't mean that you approve of it or that it didn't hurt. Acceptance simply means that you stop fighting with reality. You stop pouring your energy into an unwinnable war. You stop resisting what already is. Instead, you take that same energy and redirect it toward the only thing you truly have power over, your response. And when you finally accept what has happened, truly accept it, something incredible begins to unfold. The heaviness starts to lift, not because the pain magically vanishes, but because you've stopped feeding it. You're no longer fueling the suffering with your resistance. Imagine someone who's just been fired. If they hold on to anger, blame, and the belief that it was unjust, they can remain stuck in that pain for years, resenting the company, feeling like a victim, and carrying that wound into every future job. But if instead They choose to accept what happened and ask, "What can I do with this?" They reclaim their power. They stop living in reaction and start living in intention. The pain becomes a catalyst for growth. That's the key. It all comes down to your perception. Jung often spoke about the importance of integrating all aspects of our experience, even the painful and uncomfortable ones, because pain, when accepted rather than resisted, transforms into wisdom. A major mistake we all make at some point is believing that our suffering is unique, that no one else could possibly understand what we're going through, that our pain is somehow more unbearable than what others have faced. But the truth is, pain is a universal part of the human experience. Everyone suffers. What separates those who evolve from those who remain stuck is not the amount of pain they experience, it's their relationship to it. Those who resist pain suffer. Those who accept pain grow. If you truly want to heal, if you truly want to be free, the first step is to stop waging war against life. Accept what happened. Accept what you can't change. Accept what already is. And then focus all your energy on what you can change. And here's what no one tells you about liberation from suffering. The most shocking realization is that most of your suffering never came from the event itself. It came from how tightly you held on to the pain. A relationship ended, and you were heartbroken for years. But it wasn't just the breakup. It was your refusal to let go. Someone betrayed you, and you couldn't move on. But it wasn't just the betrayal. It was your attachment to resentment. You lost an opportunity, and you felt stuck in life. But it wasn't just the missed chance. It was your obsession with what could have been. When you finally let go of resistance, when you stop fighting reality, suffering begins to crumble. This doesn't mean the pain disappears overnight, but it loses its grip on you. And over time, the pain turns into a lesson, not a lifelong burden. Now comes the deeper part, the one most people never even consider: how your unconscious mind keeps you trapped in suffering. Because once you understand that suffering is born from resistance, the next question is, if I know this, why do I keep repeating the same emotional patterns over and over again? And this is where everything changes. Because once you uncover the hidden answer to that question, you'll realize something powerful. You have far more control over your life than you ever imagined. So keep watching, because in the next section, we'll uncover something truly powerful: how your mind has been unconsciously conditioned to hold on to suffering. And more importantly, what you can start doing today to break free from that pattern once and for all. Let's begin with a hard truth. Your unconscious mind is programmed to make you suffer over and over again. If you've ever felt like pain just keeps showing up in your life out of nowhere, like suffering is some kind of bad luck that follows you around, then it's time to wake up to a truth that very few people dare to tell you. The reality is, you are the one repeating your pain again and again, without even realizing it. And not because you want to suffer, but because your unconscious programming is pulling you back into the same emotional loops again and again. The renowned psychologist Carl Jung put it this way in one of his most powerful and confronting statements: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. What Jung meant is that the pain you keep experiencing is not random. It's not that the universe is punishing you, or that life is just cruel for no reason. It's not that you're doomed, or unlucky, or cursed. It's because inside of you, deep in your subconscious, there are emotional and mental patterns that you keep reenacting automatically. You're reliving them, not because you want to, but because they're familiar. They're wired into your internal system. The unconscious mind is like a hidden software installed when you were still a child. And if you grew up in an environment where love came with pain, where abandonment was normal, or where safety was never guaranteed, then those beliefs became your emotional blueprint. They weren't chosen consciously. They were absorbed, imprinted, and now they're running the show. No one tells you this. Your unconscious doesn't care about your happiness. It only cares about what's familiar. That's why, even when your conscious mind wants to escape suffering, a deeper part of you keeps attracting the same people, the same situations, the same emotional outcomes. It's not a coincidence. It's a pattern. It's the invisible trap of the unconscious. Have you noticed how you always seem to end up in relationships that hurt you? Have you ever experienced moments of joy or success, only to somehow ruin them or lose them unexpectedly? Do you feel like you keep running into the same kind of problems, even when you promise yourself that this time it'll be different? That's not bad luck. That's your subconscious mind repeating what it knows. That's emotional self-sabotage at work. But why would anyone choose what destroys them? The answer lies in what you learned as a child. If you learned that love was always followed by pain or abandonment, then as an adult, you'll unconsciously seek out relationships that recreate that exact emotional experience. Not because you want to suffer, but because that version of love is what your nervous system understands. It feels familiar. And in the mind's twisted logic, familiar equals safe, even if it hurts. If you experienced rejection, humiliation, or neglect when you were young, then today you might avoid opportunities, relationships, or dreams, because a part of you is terrified that the same pain will return. You may stay where it's safe, even if that means staying in a cycle of pain. And here's the part that hits the hardest. As long as you don't become aware of these patterns, you will repeat them for the rest of your life. And you'll call it destiny. You'll say things like, "Why do I always end up with the same kind of person? Why does my life never really change? Why does everything always go wrong for me?" But the truth is, it's not life. It's not fate. It's not the universe working against you. It's you, reenacting the script that was written inside of you long ago. So how do you break this unconscious pattern of suffering? Here comes the key. You cannot change what you cannot see. If you truly want to end the cycle of emotional pain, the very first step is to recognize the pattern you've been unconsciously living. You need to bring it into the light. Start by asking yourself a few deeply honest questions. What has been the dominant emotion in my life? Rejection, abandonment, betrayal, frustration, fear? What kind of relationships or situations do I keep attracting? What story am I telling myself about who I am and what the world is? When you answer these questions truthfully, something incredible happens. You begin to realize that the suffering you've been experiencing hasn't been coming from the outside. It's been coming from within you. You've been projecting it onto the world, again and again, without realizing it. And that is the moment when everything starts to change. Breaking the cycle of emotional pain doesn't mean you'll never feel sadness, anger, or frustration again. Those emotions are part of being human. But what it does mean is that you'll no longer be a prisoner of a hidden pattern that controls you without your awareness. Because the moment you become conscious of your unconscious programming, you stop being its slave. You can't avoid all pain in life, but you can stop recycling it. You can stop perpetuating it. You can stop choosing it. without even realizing you are. From that moment on, you begin to choose consciously, instead of reacting on autopilot. And in the next section, we're going even deeper. We'll explore how the ego plays a central role in keeping you trapped in suffering, and more importantly, what you can do to dismantle its power before it keeps sabotaging your life. Because once you understand the role of the ego in all of this, that's when you finally begin to reclaim your power. Let's talk about the ego. The ego feeds off your suffering. It keeps your pain alive. If you're truly committed to breaking free from the emotional patterns that keep hurting you, then there's something vital you need to understand. Your ego is your biggest obstacle on the path to healing. The ego is that inner voice that convinces you that you have every right to feel hurt, that the world is unfair, that others need to change before you can be happy. It tells you stories like, "I'm always the victim," or "Nothing ever works out for me." But here's the brutal truth. The ego doesn't want you to heal, because if you healed, if you truly let go of your suffering, the ego would lose its identity. It would no longer have anything to feed on. The ego thrives on conflict, on blame, on judgment, on the illusion of separation. It creates drama just to keep itself alive. It tells you that your pain is proof that you're right and the world is wrong, that you're justified in your resentment, that you need to hold on to your wounds. But when you start to see the ego for what it is, a defense mechanism, a mask, a survival strategy, you can begin to disarm it. You can begin to step into a deeper version of yourself, one that no longer needs to cling to pain in order to feel real, one that doesn't need to repeat the past in order to feel safe. Because the truth is, healing is not about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Carl Jung once said, "The mind that creates the problem is not the same mind that can solve it." This statement holds a profound truth, one that reveals the very mechanism of our suffering. The part of you that has caused your emotional pain is not capable of healing it, and that part is the ego. The ego is not just a voice in your head. It is the filter through which you perceive everything. And unfortunately, it's that same ego that created your pain in the first place. When you try to heal from within the ego, all you do is reinforce the exact suffering you're trying to escape. But how does the ego sabotage your emotional healing? The ego is cunning. It doesn't blatantly tell you, "I want you to suffer." Instead, it whispers convincing reasons why you should continue to hold on to your pain. It will remind you again and again of everything that was done to you, how you were betrayed, how life was unfair, how people abandoned you. It recycles those memories like a looped film reel, making you believe that thinking about them constantly gives you some kind of power. But in truth, this only keeps you trapped in the same loop of pain, in the same emotional prison that the ego built. One of the most dangerous tricks the ego plays is making you identify with your suffering. It convinces you that your pain is who you are. Without even realizing it, you begin to define yourself through the lens of your past wounds. You start saying things like, "I'm always betrayed," "People always leave me," "This always happens to me." And each time you say it, each time you think it, you carve that identity deeper into your psyche. You unknowingly become loyal to your pain. The ego will also try to convince you that the problem lies outside of you. It tells you that your pain is someone else's fault, that life owes you something, that your circumstances need to change before you can feel okay again. And this is the perfect trap, because if the solution is always external, then you never have to take ownership of your healing. You remain in a state of waiting, waiting for an apology, for justice, for someone to save you. And as long as you're waiting, you're not moving, you're not evolving, you're stuck. You see, the ego feeds on conflict, comparison, and old wounds that never quite heal, because the ego itself keeps scratching at them until they bleed again. It thrives when you dwell on what went wrong. It keeps you in a cycle of self-pity, resentment, and blame. It convinces you that you are powerless. This is where the trap of victimhood begins. One of the most subtle and dangerous ways the ego keeps you weak is through the identity of the victim. When you fall into victimhood, you start believing that everything bad that happens to you is because of others, other people, bad luck, cruel fate. And while it might feel like you're protecting yourself by blaming the outside world, what you're actually doing is surrendering your personal power. Because if you believe you have no control over your life, you will never take the steps necessary to change it. And that's exactly what the ego wants, to keep you small, defenseless, and suffering. But here comes the harshest truth of all. No one is coming to save you. No matter how much you cry, no matter how many times you blame others, no matter how loudly you complain, no one is going to rescue you. The only person who can break this cycle is you. So how do you dismantle the ego and regain control over your life? The first and most important step is recognizing that you are not your ego. You are not your suffering. You are not your past. You are not that inner voice telling you you'll always be a victim. The ego wants you to cling to your pain because that's what keeps it alive. But the moment you stop feeding it, the ego starts to lose power. It begins to weaken. And in that moment, something incredible happens. You start to awaken. There are 3 powerful ways to begin breaking the ego's grip on you. 1. Observe the voice in your head. When the ego starts reminding you of your wounds, when it tells you life is unfair, pause. Don't react. Just watch the voice like an observer. Realize that this voice is not you. It's just a mental program, a pattern, a recording that plays over and over. The more you observe it without identifying with it, the less control it has. Second, stop feeding the story of suffering. Every time you replay the story of how you were wronged, every time you talk about your pain to anyone who will listen, you reinforce that wound. You give it more power. Ask yourself, does this story empower me, or does it weaken me? If it weakens you, let it go. Stop rehearsing your pain. 3. Do the opposite of what the ego wants. The ego wants you to react, to lash out, to hold grudges, to stay angry. But when you respond with calm, with detachment, with acceptance, you disarm the ego. You take back your power. The moment you begin to see the ego for what it truly is, its control starts to crumble. You stop feeling the need to hold on to pain. You stop needing outside validation. You stop identifying as a victim of your circumstances. And in that clarity, you realize something powerful. The suffering never truly came from what happened to you. The pain was real, yes. But the story the ego built around that pain is what kept you trapped. And now, we move to one of the most transformative truths about emotional healing. Pain does not go away by fighting it. It begins to dissolve when you embrace it in a completely different way. This is the part no one teaches us. We're told from a young age to avoid pain at all costs. Don't cry. Be strong. Don't show weakness. So we learn to repress it, to deny it, to run from it. But the truth is, what you resist persists. The more you try to suppress emotional pain, the more power it gains over you. Repressed pain doesn't disappear. It buries itself deep in your mind, in your body, in your behavior. It becomes chronic anxiety. It becomes unexplainable anger. It becomes numbness. And the more you refuse to feel it, the deeper it roots itself in your subconscious. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You cannot heal by ignoring your pain. You must face it, completely, honestly, and without resistance. Think of pain like a force. When you push against it, it pushes back. That's why, when you try to escape emotions like sadness, grief, or rage, they become even stronger. You tell yourself not to cry, not to feel, not to break down. You distract yourself with work, with social media, with anything that keeps you from sitting with yourself. But when you're finally alone, when the noise stops, the pain comes rushing back even harder. You blame others. You blame life. You tell yourself that the pain is their fault. But as long as you keep projecting the pain outward, you will never look inward. And that is where the healing truly begins. It's not the pain that destroys us. It's the resistance to the pain that makes it unbearable. So, what's the key to breaking the cycle? Accept the pain. Stop running. Allow yourself to feel, fully, consciously, without judgment. If you're sad, cry. If you're angry, sit with the anger. Don't act on it impulsively, but don't deny it either. Watch the emotion. Witness it. Feel it move through your body, and something incredible will begin to happen. When you stop resisting pain and start welcoming it as a natural human experience, it starts to lose its grip. The monster in your mind begins to shrink. And here's the most beautiful truth of all. Nothing lasts forever. Every emotion, no matter how intense, is temporary. Every wave of suffering will pass, if you allow it to. But when you resist it, when you keep dragging the story with you, you stretch the suffering far beyond what's necessary. Healing doesn't happen in the future. It happens in the now. In the moment you decide to stop running from yourself and start embracing everything you are, wounds and all. That's when you begin to truly transform. Carl Jung spoke deeply about the importance of inner transformation, and one of the central truths of that journey is the understanding of impermanence. Nothing lasts forever, not joy, not pain. Everything is in constant motion. Just like pleasure, pain is temporary. It does not define you, and it is not eternal. Think back to the last time you went through a difficult moment. At that time, it may have felt like you were trapped in a storm that would never end. You may have felt hopeless, exhausted, as though you'd never escape. But somehow, you did. You're here now, wiser, more experienced, with new perspectives. You made it through. And the same thing will happen with whatever pain you're going through now. This too shall pass. The storm will calm, and the sun will rise again. So how do we begin to radically accept pain instead of being consumed by it? How do we stop being slaves to our own suffering? There are steps you can begin to practice right now. Powerful tools to reclaim your emotional freedom and step into your inner strength. First, stop judging your pain. Don't label it. Don't overanalyze it. Don't ask yourself, "Why am I feeling like this?" or "When will this end?" Instead, simply allow yourself to feel, without resistance, without shame, without stories. It isn't good or bad. It's simply an experience moving through you. That's all it is. Second, Observe it in your body. When you feel anxiety, anger, grief, or sorrow, don't let your mind spin elaborate narratives about how unfair life is or how broken you are. Instead, bring your attention back to your body. Ask yourself, where do I feel this emotion? How does it physically show up inside me? Maybe it's a tight chest, a lump in your throat, trembling hands, or a knot in your stomach. Just notice it. Observe it without trying to fix or fight it. Third, breathe through it. Instead of clenching your jaw, tightening your fists, or distracting yourself, try this. Take a deep breath, and then another. Let the breath move through the emotion. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to make the pain disappear. Your only job is to be present with what is, fully present. And something incredible happens when you do this. When you stop resisting pain and start welcoming it with awareness, you realize it has no power over you. The pain might still be there, but its grip on you begins to fade. You're no longer a victim. You become someone who can move through pain with strength, with maturity, with grace. This is your true power, not in control, not in resistance, but in acceptance. Most people spend their entire lives running from pain, distracting themselves, avoiding the uncomfortable, escaping through addictions, through work, through denial. But the only real way to free yourself from suffering is to face it directly, consciously, with an open heart. And when you do that, when you stop fighting and allow yourself to truly feel, something miraculous happens. You discover that pain was never your enemy. Suffering didn't come to destroy you. It came to awaken you, to shape you, to transform you. And once you understand this, the fear begins to dissolve. So now, let's go even deeper. Because once you stop resisting pain, you can actually use it. Not only to heal, but to evolve in ways you never imagined. This is where true transformation begins. You can turn your pain into power. This is the alchemical process of healing. By now you understand that resisting pain only makes it stronger, that avoiding it makes the wounds deeper, and that accepting it is the first step toward freedom. But there is something even more extraordinary you can do. You can transform your suffering into your greatest source of strength. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He spoke of the ancient art of alchemy, not as the literal transformation of lead into gold, but as a psychological and spiritual journey. The true alchemy happens within us. The lead is our pain, our deepest wounds, our fears, our traumas. The gold is what we become when we embrace that pain and allow it to refine us. Wisdom, strength, maturity, compassion. These are the gifts on the other side of suffering. So the real question isn't, how can I avoid suffering? The real question is, how can I use my suffering to become a stronger, wiser, freer version of myself? This is the hidden power of pain. It's a call to awaken. Think about the strongest people you've ever known. The ones with depth, with insight, with a quiet courage that radiates from their presence. They didn't get there because they had easy lives. They didn't become who they are by avoiding hardship. No, they walked through fire. They were broken open. And on the other side, they were reborn. Every experience of pain is a crossroads, a sacred invitation. You can let it close you down, or you can let it open you up. You can let it define you, or you can let it refine you. It's the choice to stop being who you were and to become someone entirely new, more awake, more resilient, more deeply connected to life. Carl Jung once spoke about something called the dark night of the soul, a phase where an individual comes face to face with their deepest suffering. It's a period of intense emotional and spiritual turmoil, where it feels like the foundation of your world is collapsing. You feel like you've reached your limit, like the weight of life is simply too much to bear. The pain becomes overwhelming, suffocating even. But Jung didn't describe this moment as a punishment. He saw it as a sacred opportunity, an invitation to transformation, a test not of your strength, but of your willingness to evolve. Because it is precisely when everything seems lost, when you think you can't go on, that you are standing on the edge of your greatest breakthrough. Now imagine that instead of resisting this darkness, you paused and asked yourself, what is this trying to teach me? How can I use this pain not to collapse, but to rise? In that moment, something powerful happens. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start becoming the alchemist of your own life. You begin to transform destruction into rebirth. From ashes, a new version of you is forged, stronger, wiser, more aligned with your true self. Each time you've gone through loss, betrayal, heartbreak, or deep disappointment, something within you has died. But what most people don't realize is that this death is necessary. It's the death of illusions, the end of false expectations, the dismantling of identities that no longer serve your growth. And what follows every death is a chance for rebirth, a sacred opportunity to rebuild yourself from a deeper place of truth. If you take a moment to reflect on your life, you'll likely notice that the experiences that shaped you the most were not the happiest ones. It was the struggles, the hardships, the times you were pushed to your edge and somehow found the strength to move forward. That is the essence of transformation. Pain, in its purest form, breaks you apart. It shatters the beliefs you held about yourself, the world, and others. It forces you to look in the mirror and confront all that you've ignored. Your shadows, your wounds, the parts of you that you've been too afraid to acknowledge. And within that confrontation lies a gift, the chance to choose, to either remain stuck or to evolve, to let pain define you or refine you. So how do you turn your suffering into power? How do you alchemize pain into purpose? Here's a practical framework to begin this transformation. First, shift your mindset. Pain is not a punishment. It's an initiation. Life doesn't give you suffering to break you. It gives you challenges to awaken you. Those who see pain as unfair often remain trapped in bitterness, but those who embrace it as part of the journey emerge stronger than ever. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to grow, to learn, to evolve. So stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this here to teach me? Second, transform your story into your power. Look at those who have been through immense suffering, yet have managed to turn their pain into a force for good. People who were rejected and learned to validate themselves. People who were betrayed and discovered the strength of trusting their intuition. People who hit rock bottom and uncovered a power they never knew existed. Your story is uniquely yours, but how you use it is entirely up to you. Third, let pain fuel your purpose. Pain can either destroy you or drive you. It's your decision. If someone hurt you, don't dwell in resentment. Use it as a fire to rise. If life feels unfair, show the world how you can overcome. If you've experienced loss, fill the emptiness with meaning. The most successful people in the world didn't get there because they avoided pain. They got there because they used their pain as a launching pad to greatness. And then comes the final stage, turning pain into wisdom. When you've walked through suffering and truly learned from it, something remarkable happens. You become unshakable. You stop reacting to the negativity of others because you understand that their projections are not yours to carry. You no longer fear pain because you faced it and survived. In fact, you've emerged stronger, wiser, more grounded in your truth. You become a person with an undeniable presence, someone who radiates quiet strength because you've been through darkness and found your own light. This is what Jung referred to as individuation, the sacred process of becoming who you truly are, without masks, without fear, without needing anything external to validate your worth. And when you reach this point, the emotional cycle of pain begins to dissolve. You no longer define yourself by what hurt you. You don't avoid pain. You welcome it as a teacher, a guide, a signal that you are ready for your next evolution. And then it hits you. Pain didn't make you weaker. It made you invincible. The choice is now in your hands. You know the truth. Pain isn't something you should run from. It's the spark that can ignite your most profound transformation. You have two options: remain stuck in suffering, resisting, feeling like a victim of life's cruelty, or use that same suffering as a springboard to become someone stronger, wiser, more unstoppable than ever before. Only one of those paths will set you free. So which path will you choose? If you choose to break the cycle and turn every difficult experience into a stepping stone for growth, write it in the comments. I transform my pain into power. Because once you make that decision, once you truly commit to owning your journey, nothing and no one can stop you. In the end, it all comes down to this. Will you let pain control you, poison your thoughts, drain your spirit, or will you do what few dare to do, use it as a catalyst for your transformation? Jung said it best. You cannot awaken unless you first hit rock bottom. Now that you understand the truth behind suffering, the power to change your life is in your hands. Pain only has power over you if you keep resisting it. But once you stop running and begin embracing it as your greatest teacher, everything shifts. You become the master of your destiny, not its victim. So if you've made it this far, it's because you're ready. Ready to change your life. Ready to stop being defined by your suffering and start writing a new story. But this is just the beginning. Watch the next video. It will leave you speechless and help you dive even deeper into your path of transformation. Click now, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the content that could truly change your life. I'll see you in the next video.